Mrs. Nightmare.
I'm a local truck driver for a common grocery store in our city. This means I stay in the same 50-ish mile radius and drive between the warehouse and several stores every day to deliver pallets of groceries. I don't have to make any drives more than 2 hours long, so every night I get to go home at a reasonable time and sleep in my own bed, rather than at a truck stop like most cross-country or regional truckers have to. This day was pretty average, going between a few stores and delivering the pallets, and I got to my last delivery location around 9. It took a half hour for them to empty the trailer, but then I was good to head back to the warehouse and turn in for the night. This was always the farthest drive though, being that the warehouse was on the edge of the city, away from everything. An hour into the drive, and about when I reached 15 minutes away, I pulled into a gas station to fill up, as I'd been riding on empty for probably too long. I went into the diesel section and started the gas pump. While I leaned against the truck and waited, I saw a group standing outside of a parked pickup truck on the other side of the gas station. They were the only ones there, but they kept eyeing me, looking over at both me and my truck. It was odd, but I thought they were just waiting for me to leave, probably so they could do something stupid without any bystanders. Once my truck was full, I put the pump back and got in, driving out of the gas station. As I did, the group got into their pickup and left as well, pulling up right behind me. Now it was definitely more than just odd. I still didn't know exactly what they were planning to do, but they weren't even trying to hide it. Over the next mile, as we got further out toward the edge of the city, they kept swerving around behind me, going in and out of the lane, and unable to keep a consistent speed. I got my phone from the mount and called the police to report the group for reckless and possibly drunk driving. Being in a huge semi, I didn't feel unsafe, but I was more worried for anyone else that may be on the road. After a couple more minutes though, they swerved into the lane next to me and sped up until they were right across from my window. I looked down at them, seeing a few guys looking at me and saying something to the others. Then they sped up again and slammed on the brakes right in front of me. I had no choice than to brake as well, stopping just before ramming into them. As soon as I did, all the doors swung open and 4 of them came running to either side of my truck, trying to open the doors and get in. I immediately went in reverse, trying to put some distance between us before I put it back in drive. My only choices were to take a chance at driving off the road, which might make my trailer topple over, or I could ram through their pickup. Obviously, I went straight through their truck. All 4 of them ran off the road just before I hit it, and after 30 seconds, I was long gone. By the time I got to the warehouse, police had shown up to the scene, finding their pickup on the side of the road and all 4 of them standing by it. As the officer put it, they were all intoxicated, but not willing to cooperate in explaining what they were doing. Whatever they were trying to do, it was pretty scary having 4 drunk and aggressive guys trying to break into my truck. Although it all happened so fast, and maybe doesn't seem that bad, I think if I'd not acted so quickly, it easily could have escalated to something truly awful. But there's really no way to know what could have happened. I worked at Papa John's for a couple years at the end of high school and beginning of college. I delivered pizzas and sometimes helped with cleaning and stuff because I worked nights. This was my normal 4 to 11 shift on a slow weekday. By 10, we weren't getting any orders, so we started cleaning and preparing for closing so we could leave right at 11. But at 10:45, the store phone started ringing. I let my manager pick it up, and from hearing what he was saying, I knew someone was placing an order. Despite my shift ending in 15 minutes, I still had to deliver the order, so I was visibly annoyed. I waited for the pizza to be ready, then left just before 11. The address wasn't too far, I think just under 10 minutes away, but when I got there, I was a little bit confused. There was a long driveway going into the trees, but I couldn't see any houses or lights at the end. I looked back at the map, zooming in and seeing that there was a house. It was just really far down. I turned onto the driveway and put my brights on. After the first part that connected to the main road, it became a gravel path and was honestly hard to follow because it was thin and the trees were really close to the sides. Eventually it opened up a bit, and across a small field was an old wooden house. It was too big to be a cabin, but it definitely was giving off that middle-of-the-woods cabin type feeling. There wasn't exactly a place to park, so I just stopped in the gravel and got out. A few of the outdoor lights were on, but they were not bright at all, and most of the woods surrounding the area were completely dark. I started walking up to the door, hoping to do this quickly because something was starting to make me feel off about this place. I got up to the porch, and just before I knocked, I heard something behind me. It was leaves crunching in the woods near the gravel driveway that I'd just come from. I looked out there for a second, but it was too dark to see anything, so I turned back and knocked on the door. While I waited, I looked back at my car, wishing I'd left the keys inside so the headlights would stay on. Even from the porch, it was hard to see any more than just a small glare coming from the plastic reflectors. The rest of the car was not visible, falling past the dim light coming from the house. I heard footsteps inside, then the door opened. It was an old man with short black hair and glazed over eyes. "I have a Papa John's pizza order for you," I said, holding out the box. There was a slight pause before the man slowly reached out and took it, looking me in the eyes the whole time. He set it down on a table next to him and got his wallet out, slowly counting through some cash, when I heard it again, leaves crunching behind me. I looked over my shoulder toward my car where I heard it coming from, but just when I thought I might have seen something, the man grabbed my shoulder. "Here, for you," he said, holding out some cash. I took it, then quickly looked back at my car, but didn't see anything. And a few seconds later, I was shaken by the man slamming the door behind me. Before leaving the porch, I got my phone out and turned the flashlight on, then hurried back to my car, shining the light in all directions, but not seeing anything. I got in and made a small U-turn, then drove out of there. My unsettling feelings stayed with me the whole drive back, and after clocking out, I did a quick walk around of my car. For the most part, everything looked okay, but once I got a closer look, I noticed some scratches near the passenger door handle that I didn't remember being there before. I couldn't verify anything though, and even if I could, I don't think there's really anything I could do. But I think someone was out there in the woods, trying to get into my car without me knowing. Maybe it was all just a setup. I can't really say for sure, but if they had gotten in, there's a chance they would have hid in the back seat and waited for me. What would happen after that is best left unknown. I was driving back from a friend's house who lives an hour away. We lost track of time, so I didn't leave until around 2 a.m. I was really tired, and the drive was really boring. Most of the way home was a long straight road that didn't seem to have a single other car on it. For the first 20 minutes, it was just me staring at the endless pavement ahead and trying to not let my eyes shut. But then my headlights suddenly lit something up on the road, way ahead of me. I couldn't tell what it was at first, but as I got closer, I had to slow down and eventually stop. There was a semi-truck parked in the middle of the road, blocking both lanes. I sat there for a few seconds, having no clue what I was seeing. At this point on the road, we were at least 30 minutes from town, and there was nothing out here. The only reason anyone would stop out here is if there was an emergency. I looked to the right of the truck, and there might have been enough room for me to get around the trailer, but there was a steep hill on the shoulder that would have been really risky to drive on the edge of. The other side of the truck had trees too close together for me to drive between. After being there for a whole minute, I figured this had to be an emergency and that my best and maybe only option was to check up on them. I got out of my car and began walking up to the front of the trailer. I remember how quiet it was outside, like the night was completely still and empty. As I got up to the front, though, I realized the light was on in the driver's cabin. I went up to the door and lightly knocked on it, then called out asking if they were okay. The window was way too high up to see through, so I couldn't really see anything from the ground. After a few seconds, there was still no response. I called out again, but there wasn't even the sound of any movement inside. My gut was telling me that something was seriously off about this. I looked down the road ahead, then back at the road I came from, seeing nothing but fog in the distance, which only reminded me how far away I was from anyone else. I grabbed the side of the door and lifted myself up onto the steps, then looked inside the window. There was stuff scattered everywhere, almost looking like they'd crashed or something, and making the whole cabin a total mess. But nobody was inside. Then I noticed the door on the other side was wide open. I stepped back onto the road and began walking around the truck to investigate the open door, but was stopped in my tracks when I saw a man in the forest walking up the side of the hill. He was tall, with shoulder-length hair, and had a very disheveled appearance. "Hey man, are you okay?" The man didn't look at me, but continued coming up from the forest and onto the road. In the faint light coming from my headlights, I saw dark red stains all around his clothes, and his face was covered in dirt and grime. Thinking he was clearly not okay, I offered to help, but he continued to not even acknowledge me. That was until I said I could call 911 for him. He immediately stopped walking and shot a look at me, holding eye contact for a few long seconds. "I'm fine," he said in a deep, threatening tone. I stopped talking and watched him get into the truck. Then I rushed back to my car as the truck started driving away. I turned around and drove right back to my friend's house, where I called 911 and gave every detail I could remember. Unsurprisingly, the case never went further than that. What happened on that road is still a mystery, one that still terrifies me. The way the truck was stopped, Being sideways, and with the cabin looking as chaotic as it did, I think something, or someone, forced them to stop. What happened afterwards is debatable, but the man I saw probably wasn't the original truck driver, and I think we can all assume what likely happened in the forest below the road.